Do you think that innocence can be fostered to turn into wisdom?
I think it must be. It's an imperative. It's very difficult, and that's not the plate that life serves us in general. But that is perhaps what this life is about. Hello and welcome to the College of Valor. Hi, Lyd.
What's up, Daddy-O?
Okay, so this is Lydia Linville, and I'm Curt Linville. And this is one of the early episodes, but boy, is this a big one. I asked Lydia what it was that she wanted to talk about today, and Lydia said,
Dad, I'm having an existential crisis.
that's not exactly right, but it had something to do with the meaning of life, which is like the existential question. It's the question, right? And I realized as I started thinking about it that maybe this is the question that we're addressing with this entire series. It's not just an episode, it's what College of Valor is all about, right?
Mm.
So, anyway, ask me, Lydia, what's the meaning of life?
So, Dad, what's the meaning of life?
Motorcycles.
Motorcycles.
Yeah, is my hair a mess? I just got off my motorcycle and I didn't know if I do look good.
It looks like it's gone through some torque.
Yes, well, that
Yeah.
happens. So, anyway, the meaning of life is the wrong question. And for all of you listeners out there, watchers out there, the College of Valor is all about learning how to think and learning what to believe. We're not telling you what to believe so much as just giving you critical thinking skills so you can ascertain what you should believe, but how important belief is for living a really good life. College of Valor is about building foundations for better living. And so when we ask the question, what is the meaning of life? Holy cow, that's the big one. So, first of all, it's the wrong question.
What's the right question then?
We shouldn't probably worry so much about what the meaning of life is. That's like the big existential question. And I don't know that it's very valuable, really. I think what we need to do instead is ask the question, what adds meaning to life? What gives
Oh,
life
yeah.
meaning?
I really like that.
So, what's the difference between those two questions?
Well, one is Lydia having an existential crisis. What is the meaning of life? And then the other one is pursuing things that bring value into your life.
Oh, okay. So, are you having an actual existential crisis because you're sitting in the corner? Are you in
I
trouble?
years from now, when College of Valor is just like this huge thing, they're gonna look at this episode of me sitting in a corner and they're gonna go, "What is she doing?"
Why is she sitting in a corner? Because it's the only place that's video worthy right now.
It is the only place that's video worthy right now, but it's a really cute corner. I made it
Well,
pretty. I've got my fake plant, and yep.
okay. So maybe we could get out of the corner by talking about what gives life meaning. So let me make a couple of assertions. I think it's very, very common in this day and age for people to get this out of sync. They're chasing after meaning or fulfillment or happiness or some other quality, and very likely they're looking in the wrong directions.
Mm,
And there's some very good reasons for that. But there are some things that can add a lot of meaning and fulfillment, self actualization to life. Um, but I think that there's a lot of confusion out there, actually.
yeah.
So, and up front, I want to tell everybody you have the right to disagree with us, right? That we expect you to think for yourself, but we also want you to consider what we're talking about because it gives you the opportunity then to maybe stretch your thoughts a little bit. And it's also popular in our day for people to just shut down others when they don't agree with them.
Mm,
But on the College of
yeah.
Valor, we really are encouraging a dialogue and a discussion and allowing people to speak and to be heard. And we can all learn something from each other. There's not a person in this world that I can't learn something valuable from. It's just a matter of valuing them and taking the time to hear what they have to say.
I love
So,
that.
anyway, College of Valor, what is the meaning of life? Wrong question. What gives life meaning? Um, just off the cuff, Lydia, what do you think a lot of people are using right now to try to give life meaning?
Oh my goodness, there are so many things. I think that on the surface level, social media and having a certain amount of followers, our culture is very self-focused as well. So, how can I make money? How can I get wealthy? How can I have the relationship that I want? How can I have, the house that I want, the car that I want, all of these material things that we think will add meaning into our lives when in actuality it it kind of subtracts from that almost.
Interesting. We could bunny trail in a lot of ways
Yeah.
with that. I think you're right. That's very common, but we don't want to stereotype and say that's all that's going on. There's some other people that are kind of looking at the accepted norms of the quote unquote Western dream right now. And they're kind of like, no, it's not working for me. I'm not sure where we're headed, but it's not working for me. We need a better solution. And I don't mean this to be an indictment of the things that you just listed, but rather maybe we could talk about a few things that might be a real enhancement.
Yeah.
And, you know, uh, taking the road less traveled sometimes makes all the difference, right?
That's my favorite poem.
That's a great poem.
Go Robert Frost.
So, anyway, I thought, okay, if we're going to answer this question, then I should brainstorm a little bit about things that people might think bring meaning to life. And so I started writing stuff down, and I got to number 49 and realized we'd probably just scratched the surface. And there's no way to talk about 49 things in a single show. And then I realized, well, shoot, it's kind of like we said earlier. This question is really the purpose of College of Valor. So we're going to be
Right.
talking about this indirectly or directly from now on. That's what this show is about. But we did put together kind of a introductory level discussion about this to give you some clues about where we're headed, what brings meaning to life. Um, I think one of the first things we have to talk about is what might be the opposite to a meaningful life. And I
Mm,
think that would be a nihilistic life.
yeah. So tell us more about that. What does that look like?
Well, nihilism is when a person really loses all hope and decides that life may not be worth living, that existence doesn't matter at all, and maybe shouldn't even be a thing.
Mm,
And, a lot of nihilism comes from the modern concept that humans are just a bag of chemicals, a bunch of chemical solutions that are self aware on some level. And we're kind of bouncing around through this existence as this random bag of chemicals, an accident, a very, very strange accident. And I can see how that could lead people toward the idea of nihilism. And I'm not talking about whether you are a believer in design or a believer in evolution. Really, what I'm talking about is how you conduct yourself so that you can experience more meaning and fulfillment in your life. And whether you believe that you are designed by a loving creator or you believe that maybe you are the result of random processes through evolution, it doesn't change the fact that you're here and you have a life to live. And now it's time to sort out what to do with that. Right? So let's think just a little bit about a materialistic worldview, very, very popular these days. A materialistic worldview usually starts with something like, okay, there's space and matter and energy. And when we measure those things and start to quantify how they work, that becomes the study of physics. And then when we study physics more and more, we learn, oh, there are all these different elements, and we can learn how to combine them in amazing ways to do really cool stuff to get products that we want. And that's called chemistry. So the base level is physics, then you get to chemistry, and then chemistry gets more and more advanced until you're in organic chemistry and then biochemistry. You don't know anything
Oh,
about this stuff, do you?
those classes were not great.
But
Super rough.
eventually, when the biochemistry gets complex enough, we've entered a new branch of science called biology. And biology, the study of living things, it gets super, super deep. And the more we delve into what makes something alive and how living things work, the more amazing it seems. But regardless, we keep advancing through biology. And then the next level of science above that is psychology. And that's how we think and feel. So if we put it all together, a bunch of elements, some matter, some energy, gets really, really complex. And somehow the result is we have thoughts, we have feelings,
Mm,
we're self aware.
yeah.
And it makes it sound like it's just very formulaic, maybe. And I think that this belief system, if you stop there, can tend toward nihilism pretty easily. Because if you have that question in your mind and in your heart, why does any of this matter? Well, if all you are is a bag of chemicals doing some fancy tricks that made you self aware, well, nihilism could set in. One of
Right.
the viewpoints of nihilism is not only that none of this matters, but maybe we're just hurting other things. Like there's this whole natural world around us and humans are abusing it somehow. And maybe we're all just parasites on a planet or viruses that are destroying this otherwise amazing natural setting. And so maybe the problem is humans, and maybe humans shouldn't even exist. That's
Mm,
nihilism. That's what leads to horrible things like mass murders.
right.
So I want to challenge everyone with an idea that there are choices in life. And as I said earlier, belief matters. What you believe will really impact how you conduct your affairs and the choices that you make and the outcomes that you're going to experience. And life's not binary, but I think it's a nice way to think about things. Just to kind of simplify this whole concept is you have two paths before you with every decision that you make. Some paths lead to more life,
Mm,
they're life giving decisions. And some paths lead ultimately toward more death, less life. And if you're making nihilistic decisions or feeling nihilistic about the world around you, your belief system is probably pulling you down the pathways toward death. And that's not
wow.
just physical death, right? That's emotional death. That's spiritual death. It's feeling dead even when you're still alive. And much about our society actually does that right now. There is definitely a way that seems right to a person, but in the end, it leads to death. And then there are ways that might not seem quite so easy, maybe a little bit more confusing or challenging. And those ways often lead to more life. I think if you think about our modern society, you look around you, you can, I don't want to stereotype, but you can kind of label a death culture. And you can
Yeah.
also I mean, it's pretty clear and apparent that there's a culture that's just leaning toward death. But you
Oh
can
my
also
goodness, I
see,
know.
you can
I
also see a life culture.
There are so many people that I speak with and I say, what do you like to do when you're not doing whatever we're doing at that moment? And they
Hmm.
say, oh, I really enjoy watching horror movies.
Hmm.
So I can totally understand what you're saying. It's not just a small amount of people either. It's the majority of people that I speak with. They enjoyed watching gruesome, horrible things on TV.
Interesting. I think that would be symptomatic, but that's also
Yeah.
symptomatic of something else, which is um, desensitization.
Yeah.
What happens in this progression toward nihilism is that people want to feel something. They want to feel alive somehow. And so, when you're a little kid and you see the first little scary scene on TV and you go, ah, you feel something. But then the next time you see that scene, you don't get excited anymore. So you
Right.
need something a little bit more extreme and a little bit more real, a little bit more extreme and a little bit more real. And eventually it ends at a point of a horror film that is bigger than life, scarier than scary, right? And people have to have that level of stimulation just to feel something because they've numbed out.
Right.
So we're talking about all this nihilism and death culture business just for the contrast that there's a different way.
Hmm.
There is a way that leads to life as well. And it's something to celebrate. And that's really what I want to spend most of the time on today is that there is an alternative. You don't have to be numbed out. You don't have to experience more and more extreme things to feel alive. The same thing happens with almost every one of life's experiences. I mean, the first time you rode a bicycle, even with training wheels on it, right, or a little
I
Strider
remember
bike, or
that.
how exciting. And then later that gets kind of common. And there's a dad, mom, pull off the training wheels, and then, oh, I'm going. And you fall over. And then, oh, can I
Right.
do this? Can I do this? But then you master that. And then it's like, oh, could we leave the driveway? Okay, now let's take that to the ultimate end, maybe the Red Bull downhill
Right.
competitions where people are launching themselves off of 100-foot drops, doing multiple flips in the air, traveling at speeds on a bicycle that seem impossible, risking life and limb. How did they get there? Well, they had to do something bigger to feel something. That's one way. Or maybe to look like something or to impress someone else that they are something. But in the end, do you think they found the answer to life?
Mhm.
I'm not criticizing the sport, by the way. It is awesome. But what I'm saying is that we go to greater and greater extremes. And if you find yourself having to go to greater and greater extremes, then it might be time to pause and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Is this helping?
Wow.
More beer, more whiskey, more alcohol more frequently? Oh, how about some drugs? Stronger drugs? How about stronger drugs than that? See the
Mm.
progression?
Yeah.
Okay, so some guy decides that he wants to hang out with Lydia when you're a little girl, and maybe he reaches over and takes your hand. How exciting is that? You know, that first that first little puppy love exchange of emotion.
We were three.
Well, keep going down that road. You know where this progresses to. People take physical experiences with each other, sexuality, to a point that it starts to lose meaning. It's not as fun. And then they have to go more and more extreme and try bigger and bigger and more radical things. And then you can find yourself in a world of, well, really, it just none of it is fun anymore. They have a word for that. It's called depravity. And I don't mean depravity in a judgmental way. I mean depravity as in you've desensitized yourself to the point that you've numbed out. There's a way back. There's a way back. And so, what would be the opposite of this nihilism? Well, it would be a life well lived, a rewarding life, a life that gives you seasons of joy and meaning. And that's what we're here to talk about.
Hmm. Yeah. Joy and meaning. How do we bring more joy and meaning into our lives?
You know, from the time I was a little kid, I always wondered about the Declaration of Independence because Thomas Jefferson wrote there
Happiness.
the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I kind of like what he said. He said life, liberty. He didn't say happiness. He said the pursuit of happiness. And I think he was right to use the word pursuit because the pursuit is the goal, not the happiness necessarily itself. And I
Mm.
would like to even rewind a little bit further. Happiness is like trying to hang on to quicksilver. Now, don't do this because mercury is very toxic, right? But before people knew better, they would play with it. And when I was a little kid, a thermometer broke and I played with it. You guess what? You cannot hold it in your hand. It's so dense and so slippery and it's a liquid and it just goes through your fingers. You can't hang on to it. You can't pick it up. That's mercury, right? And I think that happiness is very much like that. You know when you're happy, but you can't pick it up. So
Mm.
maybe the pursuit of happiness, I'm not going to call it misguided, but maybe that's not the right goal. And I like to,
So, what is the right goal then?
well, I like to think in terms of more of a sustainable sense of well being, something that can weather the ups and downs of life. Some people call it joy. And joy and happiness, you can define them different ways, but the idea behind joy is that it's something that doesn't just come and go as an emotion. It's a state of being. It's a attitude even, right?
Yeah. You can wash the dishes a bunch of different ways. You can either just throw them in the sink and be really angry that you have to do the dishes, or you can find joy in doing positive work and having a clean kitchen.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast this week, and I wish I could attribute whoever came up with this and give them credit, but I don't actually know who came up with this, but it's just such a great story that applies to what you're saying right now. So there's these dudes that are trying to move rocks from a quarry to a cathedral where this construction project is going on. And keep in mind that cathedrals took hundreds of years to build. So it was a big deal to work on a cathedral, but it was rainy and the mud was deep and it was sloppy. And a bystander saw a guy just really cussing it, struggling through the mud. He says, "What are you doing?" The guy says, "I'm trying to get this damn rock through the mud." And then he looks over to this other guy who's just beaming. He's happy. He's doing the same job with the rocks, with the mud, with the rain. And he goes to this guy, and says, "What are you doing?" And this guy says, "I'm building a cathedral."
Oh, I love that. That's great. That reminds me of what happened last night. I was walking to my car in a parking lot and it was this icy sleet rain. It was almost snow
Mm,
already.
wow.
And there were so many people around me that were grimacing at the rain. They got angry. They were running through it to get to the car faster. And I noticed how the rain was just sparkling under the lamplight in the
Oh,
parking lot. And it was the most incredible, most beautiful thing. And I started laughing. I probably looked a little bit crazy, just laughing in a parking lot all alone watching the rain. But I found joy in everything that was going on. It was just such a magical moment.
That's super cool. And I'd be the first to say, just looking for the glass half full is not enough. But hey, it's a start,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
It's definitely a start. And we don't always enjoy the rain, even when we try to make a habit of it. Sometimes it gets overwhelming too,
Right.
right? But there's something about that, about perspective and choosing good, choosing to experience what's happening to you when in a more of a positive way, you know?
Right. Yeah, my clothes got soaked, but it was worth it.
Well, you know, I was thinking a lot about this topic, and it was funny because this morning I woke up rather early, as I often do, and I started reading a book. And the book is the Picture of Dorian Gray.
Just a little bit of light reading.
Oh, it's actually not bad. And it's Oscar Wilde. And this is not a book club, but we're going to talk about books because you can learn so much from them. But
Oh
what
my
was so
goodness,
funny
yes.
was that this morning, as I was reading just kind of the opening scene for this book, I thought, "Holy cow! This is the same thing that's the topic of the show that we're going to do today." And I thought we could learn so much from this. So I'm going to read just like a paragraph and a half from Dorian Gray. But let me set the scene first. Dorian Gray is a young man, and he's portrayed as beautiful, just unharmed by life. He's a very beautiful human being, so much so that when he walks into the room, some people have to leave the room. He's
Mm,
just
wow.
that pure, right? He's innocent, perhaps naive, and beautiful. And so he goes to visit a friend who's making the portrait. And it just so happens that there's another man there. Now, this man, I'm going to call cynical, and his name is Lord Henry. Now, Lord Henry has been beat up by life, and he's been pursuing the meaning of life. And as soon as he sees Dorian, he immediately launches into trying to instruct Dorian. Now, I want to say in advance, the first time I read this, I was like, what was that about?
Mm.
And then I thought about it and I said, well, that was almost good. And then I thought more about it and I realized the most powerful lies are the ones that are mostly true.
Oh man, wow. Yeah.
And I think that that's really pertinent to our society today. The most powerful lies that do the most harm are the ones that are mostly true. And I think that we need to realize that on a personal level and start to discern what part of that is true and what part of that is a lie. So let's see what Lord Henry tells Dorian. There's no such thing as a good influence, Mr. Gray. All influence is immoral. Immoral from the scientific point of view. Why? Because to influence a person is to give him one's soul. He does not think his natural thoughts or burn with his natural passions. His virtues are not real to him. His sins, if there is such a thing as sin, are borrowed. He becomes an echo of someone else's music, an actor of a part that has not been written for him. The aim of life is self development, to realize one's nurture perfectly. That's what each of us is here for. People are afraid of themselves nowadays. They've forgotten the highest of all duties, the duty that one owes to oneself. Of course, they're charitable. They feed the hungry, they clothe the beggar, but their own souls starve and are naked. Courage has gone out of our race. Perhaps we never really had it. The terror of society, which is the basis of morals, the terror of God, which is the secret of religion. These are the two things that govern us.
Wow.
And then he adds one line, there's some filler in there. And he says, I believe that if one man were to live out this life fully and completely, were to give form to every feeling, expression to every thought, reality to every dream, I believe that the world would gain such a fresh impulse of joy that we would forget all the maladies?
Hmm. There's a lot to unpack there.
Well, like I said, the first time I read it, I thought, okay, that's cool. That's good. And then I thought, wait a minute, something's not right. Let's go back. So, this final pronouncement, I believe that if one man were to live out his life fully and completely, were to give form to every feeling, expression to every thought, reality to every dream, I believe that the world would gain such a fresh impulse of joy that we would forget all the maladies. That's kind of a definition of hedonism.
Mm.
Sounds great. I mean, it's very inspirational. It's like, yes, go for the gusto, live big, live well. But wait a minute. Is that the answer? I guess we should define hedonism. Lydia, what is hedonism?
um, I don't have the exact definition. I think that it's just um living life through the lens of constant pursuit of pleasure.
Mm, that's a very good definition. Of course, like so many of our words, it comes out of Greek mythology. And there is a little demigod that is the goddess of pleasure, right? And from that, we get the word hedonism. And the idea is that by pursuing pleasure, maybe we can find meaning in life. That's kind of the idea. If we could just have enough pleasure, enough money, enough sex, enough achievement, enough trophies on the fireplace mantle, then maybe we'd be okay. And that's the idea behind hedonism. And let me tell you, I am one of the first guys to say fun is important. It's great, right? We
Yeah.
need to have fun. We need to pursue a certain degree of pleasure. Absolutely. I mean, life is to be enjoyed, but it's not the answer to this existential question. It doesn't work. I'm saying flat out, hedonism is actually one of those paths to death. It's an ism that doesn't work.
Mm.
But what I see around us in today's world, almost more than ever, is that people are seeking pleasure over and over and over and over and over again, more and more so, and in bigger and bigger experiences, because the pleasure temporarily fills that longing that we all have in our hearts. And so let's unpack what Oscar Wilde was talking about here, just a little bit. I think there's a lot there that is almost true. And as such, it's worth kind of analyzing because, yeah, the most powerful lies are those that are mostly true.
Right.
We gotta break that apart. Um, so Lord Henry did several things here. And by the way, the passage continues that Dorian is shocked by these statements, terrified, has to leave the room. He's trembling. It didn't have that
Oh,
I know it
poor
didn't have that
buddy.
impact on me when I first read it, but then when I thought more about it, I was like, yeah, he better tremble. I
Dang.
think it's foreshadowing what the rest of the book's going to be about.
Maybe he wasn't as naive as we thought.
Well, not for long.
Mm.
Natural thoughts and passions, innocence of youth and ignorance. Lord Henry speaks of these things as if they're good somehow. And in a way, they are good. We all love the innocence that we find in children, right? The the unsoiled, the pure,
Right.
they just don't know yet how hard life can be. But I believe that in this scene, that's kind of how Dorian enters the room. Um, but then Lord Henry starts talking about virtues and even mocking them. Virtue's not really real to him anymore. Wow. Well, virtue matters. And then he starts saying that sins are borrowed, if there is such a thing as sin,
Oh, wow.
borrowed from trying to live one's life by someone else's standards. That's the idea. Someone set a standard and I failed to reach their standard. So suddenly I am guilty of a borrowed sin. And then he starts talking about the echo of someone else's music instead of your own. And it starts to sound pretty desperate here. An actor of a part not written for you. You're living out someone else's expectations, someone else's, world that they've built for you to live in. Um, the aim of life is self-development. Now, what were you saying earlier, Lydia, about people being super self-centered?
Yeah, it's it can be very difficult to grow to look beyond oneself at times, especially in this modern culture. it's
Mm,
it's very me focused. You see all of these TikToks where people are saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, and that's sort of become a survival method in this modern day and age to be very, very focused on self. And by doing that, eventually you may be able to find meaning, is what we're being told.
I mentioned this vacuum that's in every human heart, this desire, this
Mm,
longing. There is a desire there. And sometimes we think that if I can have more, own more, eat more, absorb more, be more, I will become. But I want to
right.
tell everybody, you already are. You don't need to become. You need to be who you are now. You're already there. You
Man,
you do
wouldn't
need
that
to
be so
grow.
cool? I would love to be able to rest in exactly who I am and
Hmm.
be okay with that. And then from there, build off of that and create more meaning in my life from that basis.
Well, I think that's a beautiful thought. And I think it's the complete opposite of what Lord Henry is trying to do to Dorian,
Right.
right? Um, Lord Henry says to realize one's nature perfectly is why we are here. No, that's complete baloney.
mm, yep.
And then Lord Henry starts to dismiss altruism. He says, yeah, you're going to feed the hungry and take care of the beggar, whatever. Well, that's because Lord Henry, when he did those things, was doing them out of the wrong motivations. He was helping others, maybe out of his excess or surplus. He was helping others to make himself look good. See, I'm a nice
Right.
guy. I help people. Woohoo. And then he starts talking about naked souls. Hey, everybody, look at
Yeah.
me. I have a naked soul. I mean, that's kind of what Lord Henry is. He says courage is gone. And then he starts talking about the terror of society is the basis of morals. What a pessimistic, disgusting, absolutely false view.
Mm,
We're afraid of what someone might think, so we behave a certain way. That's not life giving. That's legalism. That
right.
destroys people. And that's not where life comes from. And then he goes on to say the terror of God is the secret of religion. If we can make people fearful enough, then we can get them to do whatever we want. That's kind of what he's asserting that religion is all about. So people can be governed.
Man.
And often people pretend to have all the answers and they try to offer you all the answers and they dingle this carrot on a stick, but they don't have the answers themselves. Right?
All
The
right.
terror of God. If we can make people scared enough, I don't know. And then we get into the hedonism part. And I really feel like this is what nihilism is kind of defined by. I mean, when hedonism fails and self serving fails, altruism fails, and your morals fail, and your souls are still naked, then life loses all of its meaning. That's nihilism.
Right. Wow.
So, this Lord Henry dude thinks I have the responsibility to inform this young man, to wake him up. And the passage almost sounds positive. Go find yourself, pursue pleasure, have joy. But you see how it's misguided.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's a very thinly veiled guise as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I have to say about hedonism, let's just ask a few questions. I'm not opposed to pleasure. I'm not opposed to happiness and joy and fun. I'm all for it. But if giving in to every desire is the answer to life, if that's what life is about, if it really could be our savior to solve this problem that we're talking about, then we would already all be saved. All you'd have to do is just go have fun.
Right.
But I think if we look deep inside, we realize that at best it's a distraction or temporary. Sometimes it's a good distraction and it's valuable, right? There's value in it, but it's temporary, it doesn't last. It's not a long-term answer to what gives life meaning.
Mm.
So there would be no need to look any further if hedonism were adequate, but it's just not. It's not adequate. And we should have fun, right? And celebrate that. Absolutely. But it's not the answer.
Right.
It's a false hope. And as we
So,
illustrated early on, you pursue greater and greater and greater and greater, more and more and more extreme pleasures to try to get the same impact. And that leads you into a death culture.
right. Yeah. I wanted to speak a little bit about if if one of our listeners were to find themselves having some nihilistic tendencies,
Mm.
what do you think are some practical ways to start to get out of that and find more meaning in life?
What we believe changes our behavior and our experiences on life. And I would like to say to anyone who's starting to feel a little bit nihilistic, or maybe a lot, there's a better way. Life can be rewarding. And I just want to speak to you right now. Don't give up, because you can be better than you are.
Hmm.
There's hope in that. You can be better than you are, and life gets better as you go. And not only that, but you can make the world a better place. You can make a difference. And I want to point something out. I once heard someone say, everyone's always talking about making a difference. I mean, why do everyone always these illusions of grandeur? I mean, no one ever makes a difference. And I stopped and I thought about that for a while. And I was like, everybody who has ever breathed a single breath has made a difference.
That's impossible not to.
It's impossible not to. You're going to make a positive difference or a negative difference, but you are a part of this space time continuum. And what that means is that you are absorbing resources, you're impacting the environment around you, you're bringing joy or pain to others. There's no way you can't make a difference. So it then falls upon us a huge responsibility. And that responsibility is to make a positive difference, because we're going to make a difference. And nihilism says that life is meaningless and maybe we're not going to make a difference. Well, guess what? You're making a difference. If you believe that and you live that way, you are probably causing a lot of hurt and harm for yourself and for others. So you do
Right.
matter. You do matter, right?
Yeah.
But you can make a positive difference. You can be a
Mm.
benefit. And there is a way out of nihilism. It's called reforming your beliefs. Whether you believe that you're just a bag of self aware chemicals sloshing around in this world, or believe that you were put here for a divine purpose, you can have a purpose and you can do good. This bag of chemicals can benefit the world.
Mm.
You can be better than you are. And there's such hope in that. And I think there's something important in admitting that maybe we're not good enough yet. Um, Several years ago, before you were born, Lydia, before your generation existed, it became very popular to talk about self-esteem. And it was so important that someone's self-esteem or self-concept never be damaged. And it became a really big thing to never criticize anyone. Tell everybody that they're okay. You're okay just the way you are. There's no hope in that. We're not
Right.
okay. We're not okay just the way we are.
Man, if somebody told me that I was okay just the way I was and I didn't didn't need to change or get better, I would be highly suspicious of that person.
Well, a lot of people have believed that lie because they've been told it so repeatedly, because it was a big expectation, a social pressure to say, you're fine, honey, you're fine.
Mm.
And we should celebrate the goodness that we see in people. Absolutely. Tell people when they've done well. Encourage people along the way, even if what they are contributing is in development, let's say. You can still say positive things, right? You can encourage people to keep growing, but don't tell people they're okay. You're okay in your miserable squalor. There's nothing wrong with you lying there in the filth and the muck. No, that's not okay. You're not
Right.
okay. You can be better. There's hope.
Right.
There's hope. So that's what I say to the nihilist. And that's also what I say to all of us, even the people that seem like they have it all together and they're winning the game of life. Um, they need to realize that they also can grow. And they
Mm.
know that there are parts of themselves that are not okay. We all know that. I know that about myself. I am not fully okay,
Yeah.
but I'm growing, right?
Right.
So here's the thing, since we're talking about people telling other people what to do and what to think about themselves, I want to think just a moment about Lord Henry and what his motivations were. Why did he do this to Dorian? I
I
mean, think
think that
about
he
it.
was
Why does
trying to
Lord
catch him
Henry,
up.
what's that?
I think he was trying to save him some time, perhaps.
Maybe. Why does Lord Henry destroy innocence with bad advice? Felt like he needed to give advice, needed to instruct this young man. But why did he destroy innocence with bad advice? He could have given good advice, maybe if he knew it. Why does Hollywood do the same thing?
Hmm. Yeah. Tell me more about that. What does that look like?
Well, in today's media, I see a lot of just misguided ideas promoted as if they're an answer. And I have to think that in part it's because the people that are the screenwriters and the people that are choosing what gets, put out into the media, that they themselves are searching for, they're searching for something to fill that void inside. And so they're reaching further and further and further. But there's also another element. And I think, I don't know the book yet. I haven't finished reading it, but I've seen this personality type. There are people that tear down things of beauty on purpose because beauty shines a light on their ugliness.
Mm,
And so they think that somehow the beauty is vain and shouldn't be allowed to continue. It must be taken down because otherwise, in contrast, the rest of the world is truly dark and ugly. And I think that's the motivation of an iconoclast. An iconoclast is someone who tears down the sacred things.
mm,
I think that Lord Henry might be trying to destroy the beauty of Dorian because Dorian's light is shining too brightly on the darkness that doesn't want to be revealed.
right. Wow.
By the way, if you find yourself with those motivations, that should be a huge red flag. So I asserted that Hollywood was doing that, trying to destroy innocence with bad advice. And I'm not trying to be an ultra moralist of some sort. I'm just saying that I don't think the answers are being given. I think that there's a lot of destruction taking place. The music industry also does this. Popular ideologies quite frequently are doing this. The collegiate system, regretfully, much of the collegiate system is doing this now. They're trying to
Mm.
destroy innocence with bad advice.
Oh my
And
gosh. Yeah, I just remember like freshman orientation. I I was really uncomfortable. They were very purposefully acting to create shock value to the freshman
mm,
students. It was almost like a college-wide hazing that the college was putting on to shock students out of their innocence. It was really interesting.
I would like to say this, Lydia. The little bird has to leave the soft and downy nest.
Mm,
So we can't be innocent forever. And there is a you can be innocent for too long, too naive, and it can be harmful, right? So maybe
right.
there's some pure motivation, but the question I'm asserting is qualified with destroying innocence with bad advice. It's the why destroy innocence in a bad way? Why not inform innocence so it can become knowledgeable?
Do you think that innocence can be fostered to turn into wisdom?
I think it must be. It's an imperative.
Mm,
That's very difficult, and that's not the plate that life serves us in general. But that is perhaps what this life is about.
mm.
Transforming innocence into wisdom.
And I think you can find a lot of meaning in that as well, right?
That's it. That might be the summary statement for what this episode is all about. But I have to say this. Knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. You will never learn enough to save yourself. It's not going to happen. You'll never learn enough. You'll never know enough to save yourself.
But
That's
the
not what it's about.
mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Well, but gaining greater and greater wisdom brings greater and greater life fulfillment and joy. And as you gain that wisdom, you are empowered to shine light upon others in a way that helps them to see their own path. And
Mm.
that is a beautiful opportunity. And it's not that you'll ever have all the answers, you'll never know enough to save yourself. But as you learn more along the way, you can help others learn more too. And that is the pathway to life. That is the journey of life instead of the path of death.